תל אביב 360, ערוץ הפודקאסטים של אוניברסיטת תל אביב.
Shalom, my friends, and we appreciate everyone coming from all around the world to Israel now at a very tough moment for us. I want to tell you and share with you why I believe the next 50 years are going to be a remarkable time for the state of Israel, for our people, for our economy, and for what we can give the world. But we have to start from the epicenter of October 7th. October 7th, at 6:29 in the morning, Hamas attacked Israel. Thousands of Hamas terrorists breached the fence, the border, entered at dozens and dozens of points, and attacked dozens of communities, slaughtering 1,400 Israelis, kidnapping 240, and bringing Israel to its worst moment. October 7th tells two stories. And the first story, we have to look at it with clear eyes. It's an epic, colossal failure of the state of Israel. We failed. Our most fundamental mission when founding the state of Israel, that never again would Jews be helplessly under a massacre, under a pogrom going on for hours and hours. We did know, and we always knew, that there would be terror here and there, and usually terror attacks go on for anywhere between 10 seconds and 5 minutes. That's the cost of living here. But on our basic, most fundamental mission, we failed. We failed in intelligence, we failed in operations, and subsequently, for about a month after the attacks, institutional Israel, almost all governmental ministries melted down. Education system, welfare, finance, nothing worked. But the second half of the story is a remarkable story where the nation arose. On October 7th, the moment the news began percolating around Israel, thousands of Israelis, young men and women from all across Israel, got in their cars, drove down into that inferno, into the Gaza envelope, as we like to call it, and went to defend their brothers and sisters, but actually people they've never met, saving thousands and thousands of lives and preventing a much worse disaster. Whether it's Ben Shimoni from Beersheba, this amazing guy who 3 times went into the Nova party with his car. He had no pistol even, just to rescue people. And the 3rd time he was killed. Or whether it's Elchanan Kalmanzon, a 42-year-old guy, the family, 5 kids from a community around Jerusalem, got in a car with his brother and nephew, drove down to Kibbutz Be'eri, and for 16 hours straight, he went with his nephew and brother from one home to another, evacuating members of the kibbutz, saving 100 lives, 16 hours. And on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., took a bullet and died. But there's thousands of young men and women Inbal at Niram, or Tal Biton in her tank. And they saved the day because there were thousands of those Elchanans, thousands of those Tal Bitons. Now, this is extraordinary. Just as a way of comparison, I was in Manhattan on 9/11. I'm like sort of the Forrest Gump of disasters. And I remember I was in Midtown. I saw the towers on fire, and I saw a river of people going north, walking very quickly away from the towers, which is a natural thing to do. The only people who were driving south towards the towers were those firefighters, heroic firefighters, but that's their job. But in Israel, thousands of people were driving towards the disaster. And just citizens and policemen and reservists. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because there's sort of a cloud of anxiety and depression that's descended on Israel. You can't not feel it when you talk to Israelis. And it's understandable. This is a national trauma. But I draw my strength from meeting hundreds of these men and women, remarkable men and women that showed courage. Just I want to give you a data point that you can take along with you. On October 7th, there were actually 4 massacres in 3 kibbutzim, in Kfar Aza, Be'eri, Nir Oz, and at the Nova Festival. But there were roughly another 60 battles at 60 other kibbutzim and cities where we meaning the people, fended off the terrorists. Yad Mordechai, Mefalsim, Niram, Alumim, Saad, Iftachim, you name it, Kisufim, across the board, and Absol, Ofakim, Sderot. And in all of those 60 cases, usually it was about 6 to 10 defenders, citizens, fighting about, on average, anywhere between 50 and 100 terrorists. And we prevented our people, not institutional Israel, but the people of Israel, fought back and prevented a pogrom, usually incurring 1 or 2 or 3 casualties. In almost all cases, we lost 1 or 2 lives. But we, the people of Israel, the nation, saved the day. And I draw my own confidence in the future of Israel from these people. And it didn't stop on October 7th. For the following months, what happened was Startup Nation became again Startup Nation. Literally thousands of small initiatives filled all the gaps that institutional Israel could not handle. Getting helmets, designing very rapidly arms that are necessary or anything necessary, getting food, getting people from one place to another, a meltdown of the system and a rise of Israel. Now back to my statement, I assert that Israel is going to have a short-term bumpy period, very bumpy. It might get worse before it gets better. But then we're in for 50 years of amazing growth and success. And I'll tell you why. The single most valuable resource in 2024, even more than NVIDIA chips, is what are we going to need in the day and age of LLMs, of AGI. Within 2-3 years, we're going to see AGI, artificial general intelligence, which in simple English means computers are going to get smarter than people. So within about 3 years, 2 years, 4 years, whatever, soon, computers are going to be smarter than people. That's a fact. We know that. So what are we going to need from people? What's the added value of people? The added value of people and what we're going to need in the next 50 years more than anything is people who can make stuff happen. Because intelligence in itself is not action. Intelligence is one very important dimension, but ultimately you need to put together all those pipes to push, to change, to make stuff happen, to organize people. And what do you need? Well, you need two main things. You need the talent, okay, meaning being innovative, being flexible, dynamic, being resourceful, makeshift, being able to change. And we know, and we knew that the state of Israel generates these sort of young men and women. That we knew before, the startup nation. But here's what we didn't know. And I admit, I didn't know. Certainly not to this degree. The second critical ingredient, besides all those elements and characteristics that I just defined of intelligence, flexibility, agility, etc., group working, you need to be tough. You need to be resilient. Right? We're going to need strong people, not Israel, the whole world. You're going to need tough people. And what we discovered on October 7th and thereafter is we have a younger generation that is the toughest we've ever seen. The men and women that are out there right now fighting for 180 days, resilient, tough, because it's a tough period. You know, last week we commemorated 80 years of D-Day, that attack on Normandy. And I thought about those veterans, the American generation that fought in Europe in World War II, in the Pacific. When they came back to the United States after the war, after 3-4 years in the war, that generation was embedded with amazing values of hard work, of determination, of group work, of resilience, of patriotism, of idealism. And they carried the United States of America for the following 50 years of amazing growth. The best period in any country in the world was post-World War II, because they were the greatest generation. Right now, the younger generation, our younger generation, is Israel's greatest generation, because they have been embedded with work ethics, with courage, with strength, resilience, and idealism. And every one of them has been changed forever and cares more about the state of Israel, more about building a future here. We're not giving up. So when I look at three multiples, the entrepreneurship element, times the toughness, times having a lot of kids in Israel. Israel's the only advanced nation on earth that's growing demographically. Came back from Korea a while ago. They're at 0.8 children per family. In Israel, even if you carve out the ultra-Orthodox, we're at 2.4, which is positive growth. The only country in the world. And when I talk about resilience, you know, I've been to dozens of universities in America. I'm seeing something interesting. I'm seeing in some areas this uber softness. Everyone's getting offended. Microaggressions. Don't say this, don't say that. I need a safe space. In Israel, there aren't safe spaces. We got to be tough. So we're generating these amazing young men and women. Prior to the horrible year of 2023, even predating the war, Israel was in a very good trajectory, but I have to tell you that we had exhausted our talent. We had run out of talent, which is why salaries in high-tech were crazy, etc., etc. But here's the thing. If you look at Israel as an engine and talent as fuel, we have reserves of fuel. We have 3 reserves that have not yet been used. The first one is the ultra-Orthodox Haredi population, incredibly smart men and women, but the men, by and large, don't work. This is going to change. And once it does change, we're going to get all this fuel of brilliance into our systems, into our economy, into our growth systems. The second fuel is the Israeli Arab community, which by and large is becoming more part of Israel, but it's a tough ride. And the third is what we call Aliyah, Jews from around the world. And I would set a goal of bringing 1 million Jews from around the world over the next decade. And when you pour those 3 channels into our engine, you're going to get a steaming engine for the next 50 years. So if Israel was a company, the fundamentals are the best ever. Management is far from amazing, but that's solvable. And when we solve that, we're going to get over this. And we're looking at 50 years of prosperity. We're going to need to change. Be more independent on some elements, be tougher, but Israel is the breeding ground for the super entrepreneurs of the next 50 years. So for all of you who've come from around the world, now's a great time to invest in Israel. Prices are low. You can get some good bargains. 2 of my companies are now raising money. We've closed the round, so I'm not fundraising. I want to thank those of you who have come, like you over there, come to Israel now, and we'll remember who was with Israel now, because we're in for an amazing ride. Thank you very much.
תל אביב 360, ערוץ הפודקאסטים של אוניברסיטת תל אביב.